Bezos' trip follows Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic in trying to prove commercial spaceflight is viable and safe.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That was a pretty baller line from Neil Armstrong back in 1969 when he became the first person to walk on the moon. But if the new space race had a tagline, it'd be something like, one short flight for billionaires, one giant leap for other wealthy people who love space. Earlier this month, we saw the founder of Virgin Group, Richard Branson, make it 53 miles above Earth. It ain't Armstrong moonwalk impressive, but it is a pretty incredible feat for someone who first came known for a chain of record stores he created. Now there's another rich guy planning to do something similar. Tuesday, Jeff Bezos will be part of a 4-person crew taking an 11-minute ride to the edge of space. So that's our focus tonight, the private space race. And the first question that comes to mind, how much money is going towards this? Branson spent a whopping $841 million on this flight, but that's like pocket change to a billionaire, right? Elon Musk spent $100 million right off the bat to invest into founding SpaceX back in 2002. Today, it's worth more than $70 billion. Venture firm Space Capital estimates that Bezos has poured $7.5 billion into Blue Origin since it was founded in 2000. It's a bit of apples to oranges here, but just for the sake of comparison, the Apollo program cost a total of $25 billion. So this private space race has really blown the moon landing out of the water in terms of funding. One might ask themselves, if one billionaire already did it, why do we care about another doing the same thing? Well, according to Bezos, Branson didn't actually go to space. So that got us thinking, where does space start? International law actually doesn't define it. And once you get up there, there really isn't an easy distinction. Part of that has to do with Earth's atmosphere. It doesn't just vanish, it gradually gets thinner for about 600 miles. The International Space Station orbits at a height of around 240 miles above the surface of the Earth. But that's like way up there. If you ask the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, the France-based world governing body for aeronautical and astronautical activities, they measure the start of space using the imaginary boundary known as the Kármán line, which is 62 miles or 100 kilometers above Earth's mean sea level. In theory, once that line is crossed, the atmosphere becomes too thin to provide enough lift for conventional aircraft to maintain flight. But if you ask the Federal Aviation Administration, the US Air Force, NOAA, and NASA, they'd tell you space starts at 50 miles or 80 kilometers above Earth's surface. By that definition, the FAA considers anyone who crosses that 50-mile marker an astronaut. But there's also varying definitions for an astronaut. When space exploration first started, NASA had strict guidelines. The very first astronauts selected for the Mercury program had to be military test pilots, needed college degrees, more than 1,500 hours of flying, younger than 40, and shorter than 5 feet 11 inches, not to mention you had to be in tip-top shape. The height alone would have disqualified me, so I won't even get on the physical fitness of it all. Later programs opened up to civilian applicants, but they still had tough guidelines on training in the air, on the ground, and even underwater to prepare for these experiences. Today, we got a whole new category, commercial astronauts, which is basically a crew member on a privately funded aircraft. You actually get a badge from the United States for that, and only 10 people have received that badge so far, 3 of which were on the Virgin Galactic flight. Tomorrow, that number goes up to 14. Bezos and his brother are both set to earn their pair of wings when they take a ride on Blue Origin's New Shepard. So is Wally Funk, the first female FAA and NTSB inspector, who will become the oldest person to fly in space at the age of 82. The youngest person to fly in space will also be on the flight. An 18-year-old Dutch student named Oliver Damon was a runner-up for an auctioned-off seat on the New Shepard. Oldest, youngest, first set of Bezos brothers in space. We're breaking records all over the place here. Tomorrow's launch probably won't bring the country to a standstill like the Apollo 11 launch did back in July of 1969, but it'll still be a big headline, which is why we've got folks on the ground in Texas. Folks like Newsy's James Packard. James, my man, how are things looking one day out from the launch?
Well, Christian, let me tell you, it's exciting out here. You can feel the anticipation, and it is cool to be this close to the launch pad, but this is as close as you can get. We're still miles away from where that rocket's going to blast off at 8 a.m. Central Time tomorrow, 9 o'clock Eastern, and they are going to shut down this portion of the highway that I'm standing on when we get close to launch. There's no facilities out here in the middle of the desert in Texas for a public viewing of this blast off, so they're encouraging people instead to watch the live stream and, of course, to watch our coverage here on Newsy. But let me tell you, this is not just about Jeff Bezos, the billionaire, going to space. It's not just about the oldest person and the youngest person going to space. It's also about setting the stage for the future. Jeff Bezos is hours away from space.
You see the Earth from space, and it changes you. It changes your relationship with this planet, with humanity. It's one Earth.
The billionaire is about to blast off in a rocket from his company, Blue Origin.
He comes in as a competitor.
Phil Smith works for Bryce Space and Technology, an aerospace consulting firm.
It's important from exposing more people to what it means to go into space.
Bezos' trip follows Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic in trying to prove commercial spaceflight is viable and safe.
If we can do this, just imagine what you can do.
With Bezos on board, Wally Funk, one of the 13 women trained for Mercury missions in the 60s before NASA canceled her program. At 82,
that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
She'll be the oldest person in space.
Seriously? If you're willing, if you want to.
God. Bezos' brother, Mark, will also be there. And Oliver Damon, a Dutch 18-year-old who will become the youngest person in space.
I am super excited to experience zero-G and City World from above.
Whereas the Spaceship Two was Virgin Galactic employees, we were having an eclectic assortment going up this time.
Together, they'll blast off from a launch pad outside Van Horn, Texas, a town of about 2,300 people, almost 2 hours southeast of El Paso. 250,000 feet above the Earth, they'll separate from their booster and keep going another 100,000 feet into space. Notably, they'll go higher than Branson did with Virgin Galactic. While Branson went to what the FAA and NASA consider space, he didn't reach the so-called Kármán line, where the international community sees space beginning.
It really wasn't a race. We wished Jeff the absolute best.
The Blue Origin crew will get to float in weightlessness before free-falling back to Earth.
Unbuckling from your seat, you're free to explore different perspectives from each window.
When they touch down in the desert of West Texas, it'll be only 11 minutes since launch. But those 11 minutes will be the first step on the way to a brand new frontier.
These flights might inform better communicators. I'm excited as an artist. I would be terribly excited at the colors that I would experience up there, the feeling of it. So more poets, more artists, that would be grand.
Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' aerospace company, has a sort of mission statement on its website: building a road to space so our children can build the future. Considering the prospect of making space more accessible for future generations, what does this upcoming launch mean for space tourism? Newsy's Catherine Beek takes a deeper look.
It used to be 20 years ago, we'd reach out to people and they think we're completely crazy with this idea of flying to space.
For the past 2 decades, Space Adventures has been the only private company sending tourists to space, doing so with the help of Russia's space program. Now, the space tourism industry is quickly expanding, thanks to Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and SpaceX all competing for a foothold in the market. But what exactly are these companies offering? SpaceX wants to send paying customers to the International Space Station for roughly a week. Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, meanwhile, are only offering suborbital flights, meaning the rocket goes high enough to reach the edge of space and then comes right back down.
They're important stepping stones to getting to the place where it's normal, routine, and something that the average person sees as something that's accessible to them.
Take the term accessible with a hefty grain of salt. The more time you spend in space, the more it's going to cost you. Blue Origin hasn't released its prices, but Virgin Galactic has been selling tickets for as much as $250,000. And SpaceX is asking for $55 million per person.
It's actually pretty cheap. So, I mean, you're paying for the rocket itself. You're paying for the capsule. You're paying for that whole system to get up there.
Some of the orbital launch costs go to NASA, which charges $35,000 a night per passenger to stay on the ISS for supplies and amenities, like food, air, internet, and even the toilet.
There's also some costs associated with insurances that are needed for your medical qualification. There's a lot of doctors who are involved in making sure you're in good health and ready and plan for any eventualities, medical emergencies that may happen in space.
And then there's the training. Again, the longer your mission, the more intense the preparation is. Space Adventures clients train for about 3 months before launching into orbit.
They learn all the basics of the operation of the Soyuz spacecraft that they're flying on, and also the International Space Station.
Now, if we're talking about suborbital flights, training is about, each of the companies are envisioning about 2 to 3 days of training beforehand.
So the costs and training might be extreme, but analysts say there are around 1 million people wealthy enough to afford the ticket price. But will the prices ever decrease so much that ordinary people can foot the bill? Or will this remain a vacation destination solely for the rich? Wendy Whitman-Cobb says we're in a wait-and-see mode.
As much as people want to go to space, there just might not be a demand. So I think the next couple of years are going to tell us a lot about what that market ends up looking like. And if demand is high, costs come down, more players get into the game, and then that really does sort of open the way for more opportunities.
For Newsy, I'm Catherine Beek.
Conventional wisdom might have us believe that when we're sick, we should probably stay home from work to keep from infecting others. But one whistleblower says some airline pilots are doing the exact opposite.
I started surfing when I was 5 years old.
2019 was a crazy year.
There's 3 American girls competing for the top 2 Olympic spots.
Yeah, I was first in the rankings, but the points were so close.
Who's gonna win the world title? There's only 2 Olympic spots and they're gonna finish 1, 2, and 3 in the world. Like, sucks whoever gets third.
Yeah, it was very, very close.
I could go into this and come out with nothing.
We're working hard to get you the news you need. We dig a little deeper on the stories of the day.
That's why we're here.
To help start making sense of it all.